911, what's your emergency?
The following content is graphic, emotional, and includes dark humor that may not be suitable for all listeners. Discretion is advised, explicit content included. These stories are based on real-life EMS and first responder experiences. The calls are real, the providers are real. Names and patient details have been changed to protect privacy. Episodes may include trauma, suicide, abuse, medical emergencies, mental health struggles, or things your HR department would definitely not approve of. Any advice, opinions, or discussion of medical procedures are based on personal experience and should never override your local protocols, medical direction, or training. Use your damn brain. Follow your guidelines and your local or agency protocols. Follow your training. And when in doubt, call med control. Most importantly, if you're struggling, don't do it alone. Talk to someone, a coworker, a friend, a therapist. Or hell, reach out to me. I'll answer. Need help right now? Text or call 988 or visit 988lifeline.org.
All right, you are listening to Dispatch to Dysfunctional, where chaos has a pulse, healing is messy, and sarcasm is the unofficial coping mechanism of this job. Today's guest has lived with what most of us try to manage. She's seen the toll of trauma, not from a textbook, but from the inside. Kalin is a registered clinical counselor, certified EMDR therapist, and former national-level athlete turned mental health innovator. She's the founder of Shift Change, a platform bringing EMDR-based trauma processing to the people who need it most: first responders, healthcare workers, and high-performance professionals. Because recovery shouldn't have to wait until the next shift is over. We're talking about the hidden cost of workplace trauma and how to fix it. Kara, welcome to Dispatch and Dysfunctional.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Before we dive in, if there's one thing listeners want to take away from today's conversation, one message they remember long after the tones fade, long after this episode's gone, what would it be?
We got a 90-day window to act fast.
Okay. Interesting. I was actually reading that on your stuff earlier.
Yeah. It's the one thing I want people to remember. And I think when we think about what I talk about as the culture of suppression, the push through, get through, pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of idea that most of us have been taught to be in the world with. And perhaps maybe we could all have a badge of honor of that. And what people didn't know and what we weren't taught is that our brain can't actually outtalk or outthink any of these experiences that we have. And so really my hope in coming on to podcasts like this is to educate and to shift the way that we understand how to respond to mental injuries.
I love it. So picture this. You built a life that looks perfect on paper: national level athlete, coach for Team Canada, high performance expert, a mother, and a counselor. Then one day your body just says stop. That was Kara's breaking point, a panic attack on a busy Vancouver street that cracked open everything she thought she knew about her strength. She discovered EMDR while searching for answers, and what started as a desperate personal experiment became the foundation for Shift Change, an on-demand trauma recovery model that's revolutionizing workplace mental health. Kara, your story reads like a high-performance highlight reel. So we look beneath it. Walk us through that shift from coaching world-class athletes to helping people process trauma.
I know, right? You'd never imagine it. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I always find it uncomfortable to hear about it because now when I look back, it's like there was a girl who was trying to prove herself in every place she entered the world. And I learned that when I actually started my EMDR training. And it was in that training that I was taken back to 11-year-old sport trauma that I had experienced, who I had worked with a sports psychologist to move through. And if you'd asked me if that was something that impacted my life today, I would have told you no. And when I got pregnant with twins in 2019, I was doing all those things that you said. And every part of my life was about achieving, proving, just focused on the next thing. And when I got pregnant with twins, I was forced into my body for the first time. And when I say that, people think it sounds weird, but when you grow up in high performance sport, you learn from a really young age that if you honor pain in your body, that you'll be judged for it. And so you learn from a really young age how to push through pain, how to ignore it, how to pretend it's not there. And you find ways to cope with, at times, what feels extremely uncomfortable. And when you get patted on the back enough times for that, you know, what I've learned, there's a word for that, and it's called dissociation. You learn to dissociate from the pain that you have in your body. Now, I learned to do that. And by the time I was in my 20s and 30s, it was such an unconscious thing, I didn't have to think about it. The problem was that my body had manifested. So all of the stress and trauma I'd experienced in my life had manifested into my body. And because I wasn't in touch with my body, I had no idea I used to pride myself on having high pain tolerance. I used to always be like, oh yeah, my massage therapist says that I have the highest pain tolerance of anyone he's ever known. And I used to think that was really awesome until I learned that. No, it's not. Until I learned that, oh, it's because I'm not actually in my body. I can't actually feel what's happening.
I got you.
And so, yeah. So, you know, when I got pregnant with those twins and I gave birth to them in 2020 after the world lockdown, I had no support, no resources, because I wasn't a girl that ever asked for help or let anyone know that I was struggling. And so I had 4 kids under the age of 5 in lockdown, and I have these twin babies that need me to keep them alive. And during my entire pregnancy, I was very ill. I was sick all day long with morning sickness. Had migraine headaches. I was really incapacitated, and I still had to take care of 2 children. I was forced to confront what it was like to be in my body, to feel helpless in the fact that I couldn't make my body stop hurting. And I had to sustain that for 10 months until I gave birth to them. And then after I gave birth, it was like, how do I keep these 2 babies alive while I have 2 other children? It was a lot.
That sounds like quite a bit. That's very stressful. So you've worked with athletes, corporate professionals, and frontline responders. 3 worlds that run on adrenaline. What patterns do you see and how stress and trauma show up across all of them?
Yeah. So like I mentioned at the beginning, we talk about the suppression that happens in our culture. And so regardless of what hat you wear, we've all learned that when you can do that, you're praised for it. Whether you're a top CEO, whether you're an elite Olympian, whether you're a first responder, you get a pat on the back every time you show up when you don't feel like it, when your body says no, when your mind says no. And you learn to do that over and over. Now, what I learned when I was doing my EMDR training was that when we experience a stressful or traumatic incident, that experience imprints the right hemisphere of the brain. And what we've all learned to do is to use the left side of the brain, which is the side of the brain that's responsible for logic. And so if you think about how we've all grown up in a culture where you outthink the things that happen to you, where you try and distract yourself to think about something different, we've all learned how to use the left side of our brain. But that right side of our brain is where trauma imprints. And the right side of the brain is connected to the nervous system, so the body, and all emotional and physiological experiences that we store in the body.
Okay.
Your left brain cannot turn off the experiences in your body. So if you've ever had an anxiety attack or a panic attack, when your body has felt so charged, have you ever had an experience where you can just tell your body to stop feeling the thing that it's feeling? No.
Not really, only when adrenaline happens.
Or only when we learn how to numb it or suppress it. And so if you think about what do most people in these positions have to do to help turn it off, is to turn towards some kind of substance or some kind of thing to help turn it off. Okay. Now, what the brain never got, and what none of us ever got taught, was if you think about going on a shift, you arrive on scene and someone's been hurt, what's the first thing you're going to do? You treat shock, right? You're going to treat shock. So how do we do that? We put a blanket around a child who's maybe been in an accident. We give them a little stuffed animal to try and help bring a sense of calm. But we've only ever treated the body with a physical thing. We've never actually treated the brain. And so what EMDR does, and EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. You probably won't remember that the first time I tell it to you because it's a long description of something. But basically what it does is it takes the stuck trauma that's been imprinted on the right side of the brain and it moves it to the left side of the brain.
Huh, okay.
How it does that is by, and you can't see me because this is audio, but imagine that my hands are on my lap and I'm going to alternate tapping on my legs. Now, when you're guided in this process, the bilateral tapping on your legs actually naturally moves your eyes from right to left. When it does that, it takes the stuck trauma from the right side and it brings it to the left side, which helps the brain to process the experience. So if you think about what it would be if you go on scene and you see something pretty terrifying. Now you and all your team can go on to the same scene and every single brain will imprint a different part of that experience. It's often why lots of people, when we talk about eyewitness recounts and how come they're so different and they're not as
uniform.
Yeah. And so it's because every brain, based on how it was raised, what that foundation looked like in childhood, the foundation in childhood between the ages of 0 to 7 create a blueprint for the brain. That blueprint then, as it moves through life, will attach or grab onto experiences that are familiar to it. So if you imagine being a police officer or a fire human and you're going out in the world and you're on scene and something traumatic's happening, every single person there is going to imprint the experience different. Someone might have a visual of the scene that might be traumatic. Someone might store the smell of the scene. Someone might store the sound that was on scene. Every single brain's going to imprint it differently. So this is where doing debriefing with people is not helpful because every brain imprints different. And so what happens when the brain imprints is it creates charge in the body. There's activation that happens in the nervous system. So when you talk about adrenaline, your body has adrenaline. It has this flood of adrenaline that helps you move into, that's like a fight or flight response, right? You're going into the scene to take action. But then what happens is that you can't always turn it off. And so lots of people will come home from a call and that adrenaline, that charge inside the body is still active. And so what does that mean? Sleepless nights. It means we can't get to sleep. It means we need to do something to try and numb it out so that we can fall asleep. And so it's because that charge in the system's still vibrating and the brain needs us to help it stabilize.
Oh, wow. Okay. Sorry, my dogs are going off in the background. So you've said something bold before. Suppression culture is dead. What does that mean for workplaces, especially in healthcare and public safety?
Oh, I've wrestled with the messaging around this piece. And what I would say is that we've come to a place in time where the epidemic of suicide rates are alarming, where more and more people are taking their life because they're unable to continue to cope and carry what they have been. And I don't think anymore this is like mental health awareness. I think that people who work in these jobs, they know people are suffering. They see the people that work with them are suffering and carrying a lot. And it's not, to me, actually a stigma of talking. I think actually what I've come to believe is that we have not created safe places for people to bring what they carry. And in that lack of creating safe place, we haven't actually had a modality that's created safe with inside our systems to know otherwise. And so people are walking around carrying burdens from decades and decades on the job, and they actually believe they're broken. They believe there's something wrong with them, and that's why they're feeling the way that they do. They don't actually understand that the job that they work in is one that has ongoing traumatic stress every day. And the impact of being in a job that has ongoing traumatic stress will take you out if you don't process it. And so I think that this summer, as my business has come into many sort of corporate spaces and spaces where police departments and e-com, different spaces, people know that this is what people have said. We are hemorrhaging people. We're hemorrhaging people. So to me, it's like suppression culture can no longer, nobody's able to hold that up. There's full on collapse happening with inside systems. And I think that people are aware of it. They just don't know what to do about it.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that actually, that makes a lot of sense. And it's very eye-awakening in the end, actually, as well. So what's the fix for it? What can agencies, companies, even small departments do differently starting now?
Yeah. So, I created Shift Change with a mission. The name Shift Change was born with the dream that after every shift, you could come into my virtual space. You could process the day before you go home to your family. I've been thinking a lot about, sometimes I run into spaces, like I said, where people know they're carrying a lot. And there's people that are still in a position where they're not ready to admit that they are. But the truth is, if you look around your life and you take some inventory around, what do my personal relationships look like? What do the relationships look like with my children? What do the relationships look like with my team? Do I feel fulfilled in those spaces? And so maybe we're not able to identify that I'm not well or I'm carrying this burden. But if we start to look outside of that, can we ask ourselves those questions? And does the answer come back with great? Is the answer great? And so the knowing of the humans who sat with me is that when we don't attend to this, it ultimately goes home to their family, to their relationships, and to their children. And so the dream of Shift Change was that every person could come into a room and process their job, and then they could go home to their families feeling steady in who they are, being able to leave the job at the job, being able to switch and shift and go home to their life and leave the day behind. And so that's the dream of it. Now, what's different about us than other spaces or places where they might run this EMDR protocol is that our space is anonymous. And it's anonymous because a lot of the elite male athletes that I was working with that had done EMDR, even my fire and police folks, they have seen the impact of how incredible EMDR is. And when I told them that I was going to be bringing a group protocol into the world, they all said, I'm not coming if people can see me. And it was only through hearing that over and over that I had to get creative and find a way to offer my sessions anonymously so that people log into the Shift Change platform. And when they come into our waiting room, we change their name to a number. And you enter into, it's called a focus mode. And so it means that everyone's camera is black to each other. You can't see anyone else in the room. You just see the therapist. But the therapist needs to see you because ethically, you can't run EMDR protocols without seeing the people on the screen. So the therapist has to be able to see the person. But what happens is, one, that feeling of being isolated and alone, which lots of people typically feel, they feel alone in what they're feeling. Even though they can't see who's in the room with them, they know other people are here. What does that do? It helps you feel like you're not the only one holding something. You can see that there's a number of other humans in the room that are here with you. So that's one of the beautiful things of doing it anonymously. But the other thing is that because we've been holding stuff for so long, our system, and I'm talking about like our internal nervous system, doesn't actually believe there's a place that can help me feel better. And so when this protocol is offered in a non-verbal way, you come into my room and you don't need to tell me why you're here. I'm going to help your brain process what you've processed with this protocol that I have, but you don't have to tell me what that is. And so you will get to see for yourself how the charge gets neutralized and how you feel better. And then every time you come to a space and do that, you're creating more safety within your system and you're creating more resiliency within yourself because you're no longer having to carry day after day with you.
That's awesome. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. I didn't know you're probably doing one that no one else has ever done, but that's awesome.
Thank you. It actually is something that the assist, so it's the EMDR protocol that we use is called the assist protocol. And it was developed by Dr. Nacho Ahiro, and he's from Mexico, but does a lot of work in the United States. And he was using this protocol after mass shootings, and he would bring people into gymnasiums because his research told him there's a 90-day window to process this traumatic experience before it integrates into chronic anxiety or PTSD. And so because he knew that from the research, he started to bring this protocol into these mass spaces after these big catastrophic events. And then what happened is we had COVID. And so he had to figure out how to offer this protocol virtually. And so him and his team developed that. And so they started offering the protocol via Zoom and then started to teach therapists like myself how to do that. Now, that's when we made the decision that we were going to run ours different and we were going to make ours anonymous because so many people in the counseling world, like myself, have a dream really that we can bring people into spaces and heal together. Like that it's a beautiful dream. And lots of people still hold that. It's why they force all these types of other modalities. But the truth is that people don't feel safe together because they don't trust the people that are sitting with them. They might be worried that there's just not a sense of safety. And so by offering anonymous sessions, what we're doing is we're taking that first step to saying to people, hey, I get this is uncomfortable. I get that you've never done something like this before. I get that you're nervous about it, or you might have a belief that if we tap into this, the whole lid's going to pop off. Like all of these thoughts are true. But every time someone can come and feel safe in their processing of it, it creates more like a sense of, oh, there is a place that can help me. There is a place I can go. And so it's not dependent on whether your department is going to do it or not. And that's part of why I say yes to hop on these podcasts, because I am a believer that these spaces, that the departments should be paying for this for their people. Like I really believe that, because you're asking your people to come into a job where they experience trauma or vicarious trauma every day. There's not a day that goes by that your brain is not going to be reactivated by something, even when it's small. And the accumulation of that. Here's another stat. Lots of people think that it's the big T traumas that create the PTSD, but the truth is, and the research tells us, that small traumas, so these are ongoing repeated traumas that happen over a long period of time, have a greater impact on us than the big T traumas do, than the big events, right?
Wow.
So if you think about that, every single time you go on the job, your brain and your body are accumulating trauma, whether you want to admit it or not. It's true, it is. And so it is my belief that departments, as a part of a ethical responsibility to keeping their humans safe, the protectors in the world safe, that it should be a part of a system-wide mandate. But until we get there, we also offer our platform for anyone to join. People can join us from anywhere in the world, and they can log on to a session. Right now, we run them every day. And as the platform grows and we're able to scale it, my dream is that we'll have a session every hour so that people can log on when it works for them in the comfort of their home, or a safe place that they might find to do it.
That's awesome. I know you said about the 90 days to process the trauma. So what happens after the 90 days for someone to be able to go to the EMDR?
Yeah. Good question. Shift change it's a stepped approach. Okay. And so what the World Health Organization actually wrote an article about this stepped approach, and it's where we drew our mission from. So step one, and what the research tells us, is if we can intervene in that first 90 days, after we intervene with that step one protocol, which we call the Shift Now session, 10 to 20% of people will need more intervention. Now, the step two protocol is a full clearing of an event. Okay. So we can also bring people into a virtual space where it's nonverbal and they don't talk. And we can clear a critical incident with a team or a group. This is amazing because I think a lot of people in different departments, they really thrive on having a good team culture. People want to have a good team culture, right? And so if you can process an event with your team, you can't see them, but it's also nonverbal and anonymous. Your team's there with you doing the work. And so we can do that as a step two intervention. Now, when you treat people in that step two intervention, that takes more than 1 hour. That's a little bit of a longer protocol. From there, the research tells us only 10 to 20% need more intervention. So now the people who need more, they're the ones that go to the EMDR specialists who have the expert advanced training in EMDR. One thing I want to say, which is really important because I don't always say this on podcasts, but I'm getting smarter to say it, is that not all EMDR is the same. And so I want to share this next little piece because it's important.
Okay.
When I was 19 years old, my dad died of cancer. And my dad had cancer for 4 years. He lived with terminal cancer from the time I was 13 until I was 18. And I grew up in what is considered ongoing traumatic stress, having to go with him to appointments and watch your parent completely change. And he was a guy that was unable to be with or talk about how he felt. And so I just saw a lot of anger. He was really angry and he tried to control everything around him because he couldn't control the fact that he was going to die. And so I lived with that until I was 19. When my dad passed away, although it was a beautiful experience of being in the room with him, I stayed with him after he took his last breath. And I stayed until the people came to pick him up. That was traumatic for me because now I'm with my dad when he was deceased. Seeing a body for the first time was my dad, but it was also distressing. And that image was stuck in the right side of my brain. At that time, someone said to me, you should go do EMDR. It's really going to help you. I went and did that. That was my first moment of experiencing EMDR in the world. And it became the modality that I use throughout my life. Now, that was a huge part of my journey. And when I got trained in EMDR, what I learned when I was doing the tapping, when I got taken back to an early childhood memory, nobody at any point in my seeing an EMDR therapist ever went back to my childhood. Now, that's crazy to me when I think about it now, because EMDR is used for recent events. It's used for being able to help people process certain situations. But if we have trauma in our childhood that hasn't been processed, that trauma is still hanging out, waiting to be processed. It's still waiting for us. It doesn't go anywhere. And so why that's important is because when I got trained in EMDR, my supervisor said, if you have people who show up into your room with moderate to high levels of dissociation, you need advanced training. Now, I was working in one-to-one practice at the time, and I thought, I'm working with Olympians. I'm working with like top level CEO. I'm working with people who are in the performance of performing. They're not dissociative. That's what I thought. And then I started to give them the intake forms to figure out if they had high levels of dissociation. And guess what? They all did. They all did. So guess what that meant? It meant that I had to go and do all this advanced training so that I could also be with people who have high levels of dissociation. Now, people who are listening might go, what the hell is she talking about? High levels of dissociation. So let me just explain this so that it makes sense. When we have something happen to us in our life and we don't have someone there for us, the definition of trauma that I love that woke me up was this. trauma is not what happens to us, but it's what happens inside of us in the absence of an empathetic witness. When we don't have somebody to be with us in a hard moment, it's traumatizing. When we don't have someone help us make sense of something, especially in our childhood, it's traumatizing. And we haven't historically thought of trauma in that way. Now, why this matters is because when I think about my journey of my dad dying, my dad was unable to be with me emotionally as he was dying because he could not even be with himself. And my mom had to carry the weight and the burden of 3 children and a husband dying and a full-time job and trying to pay for her children, right? She was holding so much that she couldn't be there for us emotionally. And so what that meant was I had to figure out how to survive. And when you have to figure out how to survive, you develop some pretty protective ways of survival. And so I like to think about them as like protectors of our system, right? And so for me, I developed protectors around my heart. First of all, I decided that after my dad died, nobody would get close to my heart because that heartbreak was too much. It was too painful. So I built walls around my heart. And then I just got hardened. I got hard. And so then I went out into the world not being open with my heart, not being compassionate, just like I'm tough, I can push through, give me more. But that was just protection. And that protection is a way that I would dissociate from heartbreak. So anytime something heartbreaking happened in my life, I protected myself. I pretended I was fine, but I really wasn't. And so I like to share that because I think it's important, because when we think about high levels of dissociation, you have to dissociate when you work in the area of first responder and frontline. You have to, because if you didn't, you could not show up every day with an open heart, loving and caring for all the people that you sit with. You watch infants die, you can't go into places open because then you have to go home to your own children. It tears you apart. Right? So you have to develop protective mechanisms to survive your job. But in order to help people heal from that trauma, you have to have the tools and the skills to speak to those protective parts. And if you don't have advanced training or the skills to do that, people will come out of EMDR and they'll say, it didn't help me. Nothing happened. And so only because I've been through my own journey of unpacking all of the things that I was holding and then doing advanced training as a therapist, can I see when somebody shows up into my room, my police officers, my firefighters, and I can see the protection. It's the first thing I notice. And then I have to talk to those protective parts to get them to be willing to put the shield down. And that takes, you have to have the training for that. So not every EMDR therapist is the same. There's EMDR therapists that are trained and they're great and they can help you reprocess if you've been in a car accident but what I've learned in the one-to-one work space that I do is that everything touches on old stuff, whether we want to admit it or not.
I love it.
Yeah.
So if someone's listening right now, overwhelmed, burnout, or stuck, what's one small shift they can make today to start healing?
It's to know that you're not broken. It's to know that your brain is holding the memory of lots of hard things and to just hold on, to find head to our website, head to shiftchange.life, sign up for a session, come and try a Shift Now session and experience what can happen inside your brain and your body. We can't do historical work in that Shift Now platform, but companies can engage us to do that work with their people, or you can sign up to do one-to-one work to be able to process that. And I'm happy to share referrals for people. And we're working on a page to build our resources on our website to be able to point people all over the world with really world-class experts in this area. So send me an email and I'm happy to point you in the right direction.
That actually brings me to my next question for you. So let's talk about the bigger vision. How do you see Shift Change evolving over the next few years?
Oh man, the vision's big. It's a global vision. And I imagine that we will have our own tech platform, that we will be able to host hundreds and hundreds of people every hour, and that no matter where you live, what your circumstance is, that there is a home for you to come to and put down what you've been holding.
That's powerful. You're building a system that everyone needed a long time ago, and we still needed this day, of course, but it's awesome you're doing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So for the medic driving home in silence after a long shift, for the firefighter staring at the ceiling, replaying a call, for the nurse who hasn't exhaled in days, what do you want them to take from this session?
I want them to know that my mission is to bring help to them. I think that for so often, these folks who step into these jobs, they do it because they have a desire to help people. And what our systems never thought about or never built was a system to help the helpers. And, my journey in my life and the experiences I had as a young person, I've learned what it is to be able to say, hey, you know what? I need help. And that girl who was in 2020 raising 4 children, who never asked for help, who prided herself on having this facade, wearing a mask that made people think that she was the freaking warrior that could handle everything. The truth is, we were never meant to hold it all alone. That's not what we were meant to do, but our systems were designed that way. And so I want those people to know that I'm out in the world and I see them and I can feel them, and I'm doing what I can to change that and to shift it one day at a time.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to point out that no one is weak for asking for help, for needing recovery. We are all broken in the end. We all need help to get fixed. I've actually just started seeing a psychiatrist myself and realized that I needed one years ago. Like you said, the whole facade of don't talk about it, keep it bottled up needs to end. And we all need to actually start getting the help we need to be able to move forward with our lives.
Yeah. And maybe what I would say to that is that when we attend, it's like when somebody breaks a limb, nobody says to the person with a broken leg, don't go to the hospital and get an x-ray and get a cast. Like, nobody says that. Nobody says, right, oh, you should go walk on that broken leg and just see how it feels and show up to shift tomorrow with your leg. Nobody says that, right? And so in the same way that we attend to physical injury, we must attend to the mental injury that happens every day, whether we believe it or not. It does. The research tells us there's no way around it. All the neuroscience points to it. And so when we understand that it's not whether we need to try harder or push longer, your brain's holding it. And when you are ready, there will be something that will help you shift it. But there's a moment like there was for me. And that moment where I stood on the corner of Granville Street after I'd had these babies and I had 4 kids at home and I was feeling so much panic in my body. And I stood on the street corner and I saw all of the people suffering on the street. That was my first panic attack. I thought to myself, how do I help all these people if I can't help myself? And so that moment changed my life, because I wouldn't be here today had I not decided to go on a journey and use EMDR to process everything I'd be holding. I'm a living, breathing example of someone who held a lot and then learned to put it down. And I'm on the other side of it now. And there's freedom over here on the other side. That's what I'll tell people. Freedom's on the other side, but you can't bypass it. You can't go around it. You do have to climb the mountain. And every time you say yes to joining a session or sitting with someone and talking about it, every time you say yes to that, you're one step closer to the freedom that you hope to feel, but you just don't today.
Yeah, I agree. I think we all need to learn how to grow our own selves into our better person. As you said earlier, we all hate to ask for help, but at the same time, you can't help others until you help yourself.
Yeah. And maybe the final thing I'll add on that, to just break that down a little bit more. We say that we don't like to ask for help or we don't know how, but the truth is, at some moment in our childhood, we asked for help and help didn't come. And so we learned help wasn't going to come. And if we learn that help is not going to come, again, going back to building protection, we build protection around our heart. We learned help didn't come. Nobody helped me. Nobody was there. And so fuck that. I don't need help. And that's how come lots of people don't ask for help, is because help didn't come.
That's powerful right there. I love it. That makes a lot of fucking sense. I love it.
Yeah. So it's like, in order to know how to ask for help, we would have needed to have help modeled. And if I use my life as an example, my dad didn't ask for help. My mom did not ask for help. And so what did I learn about asking for help? I learned that help wasn't there. Nobody was going to help. And so I had to figure out how to help myself. And you learn this hyper independence that comes from not having help. And so I like to reframe that. It's not that we don't know how or that we're too stubborn to. It's that we have a memory that help didn't come. And we can change that. We can shift that.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
So that was Kalin, counselor, EMDR therapist, and founder of Shift Change. She's redefining workplace mental health, one tap and one conversation at a time. Kara, for anyone who wants to learn more about Shift Change or connect with you directly, where can they find you?
They can come to www.shiftchange.life.
Gotcha. Are you on LinkedIn or Instagram or anything?
I am. Yep. Shift Change is on LinkedIn, just under Shift Change. And also they can find me. It's karakalin.shiftchange on Instagram. And our social media platform is slowly growing. The truth is we've been busy with meeting with different people. And so we get what we can out there. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll get to follow. I'm documenting the journey of Shift Change entering systems. I'm not a creator of content by any means, but I'm sharing the journey for anyone that wants to follow along and be a part of the momentum and the mission.
Awesome. And if someone's listening right now who isn't ready for therapy yet, but knows they need help, what's the best way to reach out?
This is what I would tell them. What I would tell them is there will be a moment in your life where you will feel ready. And as a therapist, I used to feel really bad if I would meet with someone or I'd do some work with them and then they didn't come. What I learned over the years is that people come when they're ready. And so what I like to tell people about Shift Change is that the door is always open. And when you're ready, we're here. When you're ready, we're here.
That's awesome. That's what makes this so powerful. It's accessible and it's immediate.
Yeah.
Because healing isn't just for patients, it's for us too. This is Dispatch Dysfunctional, because sometimes the worst calls make the best recoveries.
If you think it's too heavy to say it anyway. It beats a eulogy. You don't have to apologize for surviving however you can. You're not the reason things are heavy, you're the reason they're still moving. Need support right now? Text or call 988 or visit 988lifeline.org. You're not alone, not in this job, not in this fight. Want to share your story or connect? Visit critical-run.com or message the Facebook page Dispatched and Dysfunctional. We're building this for you, for them, for all of us.